My sister's baby shower was held at a lakefront mansion rented for $10,000. When I arrived, everyone was wearing white, except me. My aunt smirked, she always has to ruin the aesthetic. Then my sister said, I told you, she's just here for the free food. Hours later, they presented a slideshow of family memories, with me photoshopped out of every single picture. The day started off with me nervously rechecking the GPS on my phone as I drove through the curving wooded roads leading to Lake Geneva. The houses kept getting bigger, lawns more manicured, and the silence more expensive. I hadn't been invited to many family events lately, not since my divorce 6 months ago, so I wasn't sure what to expect. The baby shower invitation had come via email, some overly stylized, pastel-colored cards sent from one of those premium event sites. I skimmed it. It said Saturday 2 p.m. and had directions to the mansion they rented. I didn't see anything about a dress code. That became painfully obvious the moment I stepped out of my car. White. Everyone was dressed in white. Cream, ivory, snow, eggshell, linen, every variation of it. Even the children. It looked like a wedding commercial or a Pinterest board come to life. I paused, unsure if I should just turn around. But I'd driven over an hour to be there. And I figured, maybe someone else forgot too. Inside, the mansion was stunning. Vaulted ceilings, modern rustic decor, huge glass windows looking out over the lake. Guests milled about holding glasses of champagne, and waiters walked around with tiny hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. I tried to make myself as invisible as possible, which wasn't hard considering I was the only one in a deep navy dress, completely clashing with the sea of whites. My Aunt Maxine spotted me before I could blend into a corner. She gave me one of her trademark pursed smiles. She always has to ruin the aesthetic, she said to no one in particular, but loud enough that I heard. I pretended I didn't. I looked around for someone, anyone, I could stand next to without feeling like a sore thumb. And that's when Celia floated in, all radiant in a flowing white lace gown, hand resting under her baby bump like she was on the cover of a lifestyle magazine. She barely glanced at me before turning to Maxine. I told you, she said with a smirk. She's just here for the free food. There were a few polite chuckles around them, like it was all in good fun. But I knew what it was. I'd known for years, actually. I was the difficult one. The one who moved out early. The one who didn't go into business or marry a high earner. I married for love. I became a teacher. I didn't have kids. And when I finally divorced after 11 years of trying to make it work with a man who didn't care anymore, I became the failure. Still, I stayed. For the shrimp cocktail, the awkward small talk, and the paper-thin hope that maybe I was imagining the distance. There were games. Guess the baby food flavor. Decorate a diaper. Guess the belly circumference with a piece of yarn. I played. I smiled. I nodded through stories from cousins who hadn't messaged me in over a year but suddenly wanted to know what I'd been up to. Then, as the sun began to set and people refilled their glasses, someone called everyone into the great room. We put together something special, one of the cousins said. The lights dimmed. A projector clicked on. And then, the slideshow. It started sweet enough. Childhood photos of Celia and me running through sprinklers. Birthday cakes. Trick-or-treating in matching costumes. But somewhere around the teenage years, I started noticing something strange. I wasn't there. Or rather, I remembered being in those moments. That Christmas morning? I was sitting right next to Celia in that photo. That beach vacation in 2003? I was the one who took that picture of Mom and Celia holding up their sandals. But in the slideshow? I wasn't in the frame at all. A birthday party from college years, everyone was lined up on a couch. I remembered sitting at the edge. But in the photo, the couch looked oddly stretched, the cushions cloned, the corner where I should be, blurred. Erased. Every single picture was altered. I knew because I was there. I remembered the laughter, the flash of the camera, even the clothes I wore. And yet, watching that screen, you'd think Celia had grown up an only child. At the end, everyone clapped. Some even wiped away tears. No one said a word about the obvious. No one looked at me. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I walked out to the back patio, where the lake shimmered in twilight, and tried to gather my thoughts. That's when my mother came out with a glass of wine in each hand. She held one out to me. "It was a lovely slideshow," she said softly. "Why wasn't I in it?" I asked. She hesitated. "Celia wanted it to be about her. About the baby. Not about the past. I was in those memories." "I know, sweetie. But sometimes your presence, it complicates things." I stared at her. "I complicate things?" "You're intense, Lara. You always have been." And Celia just wanted the day to be peaceful. That was the moment. The click in my mind where it all snapped into place. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an oversight. It was a decision. They had decided I didn't belong. That I made things too real. Too raw. That I didn't fit their glossy, white curated version of family. So I handed the untouched glass of wine back to my mother. And I left. I didn't hear from anyone that night after I left. Not Celia. Not my mom. Not even a text from one of the cousins pretending to check in. It was as if I'd been erased from the event, both digitally and emotionally. Just like in the slideshow. The drive back to Milwaukee was quiet. I didn't put on any music. I didn't cry, either. I thought maybe I would. But I didn't. There was something so strange about that feeling, when the pain is too old to hurt the same way anymore. It was just hollow. Familiar. I got home, kicked off my shoes, and fed the cat. I watched her eat and thought about how much better animals are at unconditional love than most people. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from sadness or regret, but from the replay of every single interaction that day. The way they looked at me. Or didn't. The silent consensus that I was less important. Less welcome. Less worthy of being remembered. What stuck with me most wasn't even Celia's jab. It was my mom's face, soft, unbothered, like this was all perfectly reasonable. "You complicate things." That was what she said. I kept hearing it over and over in my head. Like I was a problem to be solved. A mess to be cleaned up for aesthetic purposes. I didn't go into work the next day. I called in sick and sat in my apartment with a mug of black coffee that went cold before I drank half. Then I opened my laptop and started scrolling through old photos. My own folders. Not the ones that had been curated. There I was. A chubby toddler in footy pajamas next to Celia, both of us opening gifts in our grandparents' living room. Me, at 12, holding Celia's hand as she cried on her first day of school. That same Christmas where I was supposedly never sitting next to her on the couch, I found the unedited photo. There I was, in a red sweater with a crooked smile. Celia leaning against me. And then, slowly, the timeline changed. As the years went on, the photos got fewer. More group shots I was no longer in. Birthday parties I don't remember being invited to. Facebook albums where I was tagged in one blurry corner shot, cropped out in the final post. It was like watching myself fade out of existence. I'd known the distance was there. I just hadn't realized how deliberate it had become. The text started a few days later. Not real apologies. Just vague feelers. My cousin Bailey, "Hey. Sorry if things felt a little weird at the shower. You doing okay?" My Aunt Maxine, "Let's catch up sometime soon. It's been too long." Celia finally texted 4 days after the event. "Celia, sorry if the slideshow upset you. I wasn't trying to hurt you. It was just meant to be a celebration for me and Royce." That was it. No ownership. No acknowledgement that I'd been erased, not just overlooked. Just a shallow attempt at smoothing over the optics. I didn't reply. I didn't have the energy to explain why that was more than just an oversight. Why being made invisible in front of 50 people wasn't something a quick text could fix. The silence stretched into weeks. My mom left a voicemail about a week after that. Her voice was calm, measured. "I hope you're doing all right. We missed you at brunch last weekend. Celia is asking about you. She said she hopes you're not still upset. Maybe give her a call?" Still upset. Like it was a brief emotional flare-up. Like it should have passed by now. Like I was being dramatic. I didn't return her call either. Instead, I started doing something I hadn't done in years. I reached out to people outside of my family. My old friend from college, Talia, who I'd drifted from when things got messy during my divorce. I sent her a message. She responded right away. We made plans for coffee. Then drinks. Then dinner. She didn't ask why it had taken me so long. She just hugged me when I showed up. It felt real. I didn't bring up the baby shower right away. But a few weeks later, when I did, her reaction was immediate and visceral. "Wait, they photoshopped you out of the slideshow? That's actually insane, Lara." Her words startled me. Not because they were harsh. But because they were validating. That was insane. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being sensitive. I wasn't complicating things. They had decided that the version of family they wanted didn't include me. And I was finally beginning to understand that I didn't have to keep showing up for people who made me feel unwelcome in my own history. But understanding something doesn't make it easier. It was around this time that the invites started showing up again. Celia's maternity photo shoot viewing brunch. A cousin's engagement party. A group family dinner to catch up. I ignored them all. And then, 2 months after the baby shower, I got another text. "Mom, Celia had the baby. Healthy boy. 7 pounds 6 ounces. She's naming him Elias. She says she hopes you'll come meet him soon." That was it. Not even a photo. Not a call. Just a bland announcement and a passive suggestion that it was now on me to step back into the fold. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely. Part of me felt like if I didn't respond, I'd be proving their point. That I was too cold. Too difficult. Too unwilling to forgive. But the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Not in a vengeful way. Not in a cut them off forever kind of way. Just done with trying to belong where I was actively made to feel invisible. But saying that out loud? It's hard. So now, I sit here with that message still unopened. It's been marked as read. I know they saw that. And I know they're probably sitting around, wondering what my silence means. But they never asked what their own silence meant for all these years. How many events I wasn't invited to. How many versions of our family they created without me in it. Now, they're uncomfortable with my distance. But for years, they were perfectly comfortable with my absence. I didn't respond to the text. For weeks, it just sat there on my phone, hovering in my messages app like a conversation I didn't want to open but couldn't quite delete. Every time I thought about replying, something in my chest tightened. It wasn't bitterness. I don't think it was anger, either. It was something quieter. A knowing, maybe. A slow, reluctant understanding that this was just how my family operated now, emotionally curated, surgically selective, and so steeped in appearances that discomfort wasn't tolerated, only edited out. I went about my days. I worked. I drank tea. I graded essays on The Crucible and To Kill a Mockingbird. I rewatched old films on VHS tapes I hadn't touched in years. I read long articles on emotional neglect and estrangement like they were manuals for surviving in invisible ways. I stopped checking social media altogether, something I never thought I'd actually follow through with, but it felt liberating not to scroll through pictures of people pretending everything in their lives was flawless. Still, I thought about that baby. Elias. He had nothing to do with this. He was just a few days old, fresh into the world, unaware that one side of his family tree was already withering. I wondered what story Celia would tell him one day about why his Aunt Laura didn't come around. I wondered if she'd even mention me at all. Some part of me wrestled with guilt. The soft kind that whispers in the background. You're being stubborn. They're still your family. Don't punish a baby for what the adults did. I thought about sending a gift. Something small. A neutral gesture. But even that felt loaded. Would it be interpreted as an olive branch? Would they parade it as proof that everything is fine now? That's what they like to do, take surface-level actions and build entire narratives out of them. If I sent a gift, would it be spun into a story where I'd finally come around? And was that even what I wanted? The silence dragged on. Another voicemail from my mother came about 3 weeks later. She sounded irritated this time. Not angry, exactly, but clipped. Formal. Lara, I don't know what's going on with you, but this is getting hurtful. Celia's been through a lot. She doesn't need this added stress. If you don't want to be part of the family, I guess that's your choice. But you're making things unnecessarily difficult. That word again. Difficult. I let the message sit for a while. I replayed it once, then twice, then again with the volume low. I wasn't sure what I was listening for, some hint of concern, maybe. Some softness. But all I heard was pressure. Frustration. And the implication that my silence was the real offense. Not the years of slow exclusion. Not the fact that I'd been erased from a digital family history project like I was a stranger who once passed through. Not the reality that even now, when I pulled away to protect myself, I was being painted as the problem. I wasn't sure what they wanted from me anymore. Forgiveness? A reset? A seat at the table, but only if I stayed quiet and wore the right color? One night in late February, Milwaukee night still bitter, the sidewalks coated in slush, I got a knock on my door. No warning. I opened it to find Roy standing there. Celia's husband. He looked like he'd stepped out of a tech startup meeting, even in the snow. Tailored coat, polished shoes, some leather bag slung over his shoulder like he'd just come from a conference. I blinked. Hey, he said casually, like we ran into each other at Trader Joe's. Can I come in? I hesitated for just a second too long, and then stepped aside. He didn't take off his shoes. Just walked in, glanced around, and stood in the center of my living room like he wasn't sure what to say. So, I know things have been weird. I waited. I don't really want to get in the middle of anything, he continued, but Celia's been upset. I know she misses you. She just doesn't know how to reach out anymore. I raised an eyebrow. She texted me. Once. 3 weeks ago. Yeah, well, she thinks you're still mad. I didn't respond. He sighed and sat down, uninvited, but I didn't stop him. She's just been under a lot of pressure. With the baby, and your mom, and the planning and the stress and… I don't know. She says you're always judging her. I almost laughed. I'm judging her? That's what she says. I studied him for a long moment. He didn't look angry. He looked uncomfortable. Like someone who'd been asked to deliver a message he didn't believe in but didn't want to question. Like he wanted to be the good guy who patched things up without getting his hands dirty. I'm not mad, I finally said. Royce nodded like he was relieved. Okay. That's good. Then maybe you can just reach out? Let her know? I shook my head slowly. I said I'm not mad. But that doesn't mean I want to pretend like nothing happened. That seemed to confuse him. I think she just wants things to go back to how they were, he offered. They were never good, I said simply. He left not long after that. I didn't invite him to stay. I didn't ask him to pass along a message. I think he wanted to be able to report back that he tried. That he came in good faith. But even that visit showed me something: no one was really listening. They were all just trying to smooth the surface, patch the cracks, move on without actually fixing anything underneath. And maybe that's what bothered me most. That they didn't want reconciliation. They wanted submission. They wanted me to smile and pose for pictures and accept the empty seats they left for me, literal and metaphorical, as if I should just be grateful to be included at all. As spring crept in and the snow melted, I thought more and more about what it meant to let go of a family. Not in anger. Not in punishment. But in peace. In protection. In love, for myself. Spring eventually settled into summer. The invitations kept coming: baby's first month photos, baptism ceremony, a backyard barbecue to introduce Elias to the family. I didn't go to any of them. I didn't send gifts. I didn't call. And still, not a single person showed up at my door with a real apology. They just wanted it to blow over. But I wasn't interested in letting it blow over. I was interested in not being made to feel small anymore. I started talking about it more, too. To my therapist, to my friend Talia, even to a few colleagues who'd become close over the years. I wasn't hiding the story anymore. I wasn't shielding my family's behavior to protect their image. The more I said it out loud, the less shame it held. The clearer everything became. And that clarity gave me something unexpected: motivation. I stopped trying to earn my family's love and turned all that energy into something else: myself. By July, I'd finally applied to the MFA writing program I'd been talking myself out of for 5 years. I'd been accepted within weeks, offered a part-time teaching assistantship to supplement my income. It was at the University of Chicago, close enough to move without uprooting everything, far enough to feel like a reset. I also started a blog. At first, it was anonymous, a collection of essays about invisible siblings, emotional neglect, the unspoken grief of being pushed out of your own family. It caught on. Quietly at first. Then more and more people began sharing their stories in the comments. By the fall, I was writing under my real name. People began reaching out. Publishers, editors, podcast hosts. It resonated. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was common. Families all over the world operated in silence, brushing people out of their lives without ever calling it what it was. I didn't doubt anyone. I didn't name names. But I told the truth. And in doing that, I did something my family never expected. I became visible again, but on my own terms. They found out, of course. The blog had gone semi-viral after I published a piece titled "The White Dress Code," a story of erasure at my sister's baby shower. It didn't need to name names. The details were specific enough that anyone in my family reading it would recognize the scene. I didn't hold back. I wrote about how I showed up to that mansion in navy blue. How my aunt sneered. How my sister made a comment about me being there for food. How they photoshopped me out of every photo in the Family Memories slideshow. How my mother told me I complicated things. And how I left. That post was shared over 20,000 times. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls. First from my mother. Then from Celia. Then from Royce. Then from a string of numbers I didn't even recognize, probably cousins. I didn't pick up a single one. I did, however, post a follow-up piece titled "When They're More Upset About You Telling the Truth Than the Fact They Hurt You." That one did even better. Later that week, I received a long, awkward email from my mom. It started with, "We read your blog," and included a thinly veiled attempt at guilt-tripping. "You know how much we value privacy. Airing family issues online isn't how we solve things." I didn't respond to that either. Because here's the thing, I hadn't aired dirty laundry. I'd told my story. I hadn't lied, I hadn't shamed, I hadn't even sought revenge. I'd just refused to be erased. But the universe has a sense of humor. A month later, Celia reached out again. This time, the tone was different. She said she'd read every post. That she cried reading the one where I described how it felt to watch my younger sister smile in a room where I'd been edited out of my own life. She said she didn't know it had affected me that deeply. She wanted to meet. So, for the first time in nearly a year, I agreed. We met at a small cafe in Kenosha, halfway between Milwaukee and where she lived with Royce and the baby. She looked tired. New mother tired, but also something deeper. Worn down tired. She ordered chamomile tea. I didn't order anything. I guess you hate me now, she said after a long silence. No, I said. I just don't trust you. She nodded. Fair. She started apologizing, rambling in that scattered way people do when they're trying to rewrite something they finally understand looks bad on the outside. I didn't think it would matter. I thought you'd laugh. I didn't expect people to take it so seriously. But I did, I said. I always did. She bit her lip. There was a long pause. Then, what can I do to fix it? I looked her in the eye and said, you can start by not pretending you didn't know what you were doing. You didn't want me in those pictures. You didn't want me there, not really. You just didn't want to be called out for leaving me out. She didn't argue. I think that was the moment she realized I wasn't trying to guilt her, I was holding her accountable. She didn't ask for forgiveness that day. And I didn't offer it. But for the first time, she listened. The aftermath wasn't some glossy reconciliation. We didn't hug. We didn't cry into matching lattes. But later that night, I saw a new post on her social media. A slideshow of her and the baby. And one quiet photo at the end, a blurry, candid shot from childhood. Me and her. At the beach. Unedited. Unfiltered. No caption. Just posted. That was all. I didn't like it. I didn't comment. But I saw it. And I knew she was finally starting to understand. Not just what she had done, but what I had taken back.